When my parents found out I was gay, they abandoned me and gave everything to my brother. Years later, he went broke and they came back to me. But I had other plans. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm 35 years old, and this is a story I never thought I'd have to tell. It's about family, betrayal, and how sometimes life gives you a second chance to make things right. I grew up in what seemed like the perfect family. My father, Robert, owned a successful chain of restaurants throughout the city. My mother, Carol, managed the family finances like an expert. We had a beautiful house, vacations in Europe every year, and I thought my future was secure. My younger brother, David, was always the obvious favorite, but it never bothered me too much. We were brothers, right? The bomb exploded when I was 22, fresh out of college with a business administration degree. I had been hiding my sexuality for years, but finally gathered the courage to tell them the truth. I thought that being a modern, educated family they would understand. I was wrong, completely wrong. I remember that night like it was yesterday. We were having dinner in our elegant dining room, with the china my mother reserved for special occasions. I took a deep breath and said, "Dad, Mom, I have something important to tell you. I'm gay." The silence that followed was deafening. My father dropped his fork, and my mother went pale as the wall. David, who was 19 at the time, looked at me with a mixture of shock and disgust. "This has to be a joke," my father finally said, with a voice I'd never heard from him before. "It's not a joke, Dad. It's who I am." What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. My father yelled at me that I had ruined the family name. How was he going to introduce me to his business partners? My mother cried, saying where she had failed as a mother, and David just stayed quiet, watching everything like it was a show. "If you insist on living this lifestyle," my father said with contempt, "then you're no longer my son." I thought it was the heat of the moment, that after a few days things would calm down. But they didn't. The next morning, when I came down for breakfast, there was a suitcase waiting for me by the front door. "You have until tonight to leave," my mother told me without even looking me in the eyes. "Mum, you can't be serious. Your father already spoke with the lawyer. They're removing you from the inheritance and the will. Everything will go to David now." That day was the longest of my life. I packed my things while listening to my parents talk to David about his future in the family business and how now he would be the sole heir. David didn't protest once. In fact, he seemed excited about the prospect. That night, as I loaded my belongings into my used car, David came out to talk to me. "Alex," he said, using the nickname he'd used since we were kids, "this doesn't have to be forever. Maybe if you change." "Change?" I looked at him incredulously. "David, this isn't something you change. It's who I am." He shrugged. "Well, then I guess it's your choice." And so at 22, I found myself completely alone, without family, without money, beyond my student savings, and without the future I had taken for granted my entire life. The first years were brutal. I worked 2 jobs to afford a small apartment. In the mornings, I worked at an accounting office, and at night I waited tables at a downtown restaurant. Some weekends I also worked events to earn extra money. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Either you sink or you learn to swim like never before in your life. I decided to swim. Over time, my work at the accounting office led me to meet different entrepreneurs and small businesses. I realized I had a natural talent for numbers and financial strategies. I started offering freelance consulting services on my days off. One of my first clients was a guy named Eduardo, who had a small software company that was struggling financially. I helped him restructure his finances and find investors. His company took off, and when he sold the company 3 years later, he offered me a position as a partner in his new venture capital firm. All this time I tried to contact my family several times, phone calls that were never returned, letters that apparently were never read, even showing up at Christmas once, only to have the security staff they had hired throw me off the property. Eventually I stopped trying. Meanwhile, through mutual acquaintances, I heard about what was happening with David and the family business. At first, everything seemed to be going well. David had married a girl from a wealthy family. They had 2 children, and they lived in a mansion even bigger than the original family home. But I also heard troubling rumors. David didn't have a head for business like my father. Expected. He was making impulsive decisions, expanding too fast, spending money on vanity projects. My father, who was now 65, had decided to retire and leave everything in David's hands. For my part, my venture capital career had taken off incredibly. In 5 years, I had helped launch several successful startups and had accumulated considerable wealth. I bought a beautiful house in the best neighborhood in the city, drove a Tesla, and traveled the world. More importantly, I had found love with Marcus, an incredible architect I'd been with for 3 years. Life was good. I had built my own family with friends who loved me for who I really was. And then, 6 months ago, I received a call that changed everything. It was David. "Alex?" His voice sounded different, tense. "I need to talk to you." It had been more than 10 years since we'd last spoken. My first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity won. "What do you want, David?" We're in trouble, Alex. The company is bankrupt. Dad is furious. Mum is sick from stress. We need your help." I almost laughed. "My help? Really? I know things ended badly between us, but you're my brother, and I've heard you've done very well." "Oh, yeah? How did you find that out?" "I've been following your career. Alex, you're incredible at what you do. If anyone can save the family business, it's you." I told him I'd think about it and hung up. But honestly, I already knew what my answer would be. 2 days later, David showed up at my office. He looked terrible. Dark circles, wrinkled suit, and he had lost a lot of weight. Clearly, stress was killing him. "Alex, please," he begged in front of my entire team. "The company is going to go bankrupt next month if we don't find a solution. Dad could lose everything. Mum could lose the house." "And?" I asked coldly. "What do you mean, and? They're our parents." "David," I stood up from my desk. "When I was 22 and needed them, they told me. I was no longer their son. When I needed a family, they threw me out like a dog. Now that they need me, suddenly I'm their son again? Things were different then." "No, David. Things were exactly the same. I was the same person then that I am now. The only difference is that now I have something they want." David was quiet for a moment. "So you're not going to help?" "Oh, I'm going to help," I said with a smile that probably scared him a little. "But it's going to be on my terms." I explained my proposal. I would buy the family company, but not as a gift or a loan. It would be a complete acquisition. David and my parents would become employees if I decided to keep them. Everything would be mine. "But Alex, that's Dad's company. It's our family legacy." "No," I corrected him. "It was his company. Now it's his problem. And soon, if he accepts my offer, it will be my company." David left that day without giving an answer, but I knew he had no options. A week later, I received another call, this time from my father. "Alexander," his voice sounded broken. "Can we talk?" "Of course, Robert." I used his name deliberately. Without the dad I had used all my life. "David told me about your proposal. And? It's very harsh, son." "Son?" I laughed. "How interesting. 13 years ago, you told me I was no longer your son." There was a long silence. "Alexander, I was wrong. Your mother and I were wrong. We've been wrong all these years." "Oh yeah, what made you change your mind? My money?" "No, we've learned, we've grown. Your mother has been going to therapy. We've even been going to support groups for parents of LGBT children." This genuinely surprised me. "Really?" "Yes. We realized we lost our son because of our stupid prejudices. And now, seeing how David turned out, we realize we also lost the son who really had a head for business. It was the first time in my life I heard my father admit he was wrong about something. "Robert," I finally said, "if you want my help, you have to understand something. I'm not going to rescue the company so it remains yours. If I do this, it's because I see a business opportunity. Nothing more, nothing less." "I understand. And another thing, if I agree to do this, I'm going to restructure everything. I'm going to fire whoever I have to fire. I'm going to change whatever I have to change. It's not going to be sentimental." "I understand. Even if that means firing David?" A long pause. "Yes, even if that means firing David." 2 weeks later, the papers were signed. Officially, I was the owner of the company I had once hoped to inherit. My first order of business was a meeting with all staff, including David. "Good morning," I said from the front of the conference room that I remembered from when I was a child visiting the office with my father. "As you know, I'm the new owner of this company. For those who don't know, I'm Alexander Rivera, and yes, I'm Robert Rivera's son." I could see the confused faces. Many long-time employees remembered me but didn't understand what had happened all these years. I'm going to be direct. This company was 1 month away from bankruptcy. We're going to make drastic changes to save it. Some of you will keep your jobs, others won't. Decisions will be based solely on merit and contribution to the company. I looked directly at David. There will be no family. Favoritism. Over the following weeks, I did exactly what I had promised. I audited every department, every process, every employee. David, as expected, had to go. He didn't have the necessary skills and had made decisions that had cost the company millions. "Alex, please," he begged me during our private meeting. "I have a family. How am I going to support my children?" "David, you'll have a generous severance package, and I'm sure with your experience you can find work elsewhere." "But this is humiliating. What will people say?" "People will say that actions have consequences," I replied. "For 13 years, you treated me like I didn't exist. Now you're going to experience what that feels like. But here's the thing. I'm not a monster. Although David had been complicit in the treatment I received, he was also a victim of our parents' expectations and prejudices. David," I told him at the end of our meeting, "I'm going to make you an offer. There's a position available at one of the companies in my portfolio. It's a junior position, but it has growth potential. If you really want to work and learn, you can start there." He looked surprised. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because unlike you, I don't abandon family completely. But it's going to be on my terms. You're going to start from the bottom. You're going to learn humility, and you're going to work to earn every promotion." David accepted the offer. As for my parents, I decided to keep them in the company, but in very different roles. My father, who had once been the all-powerful CEO, was now a part-time consultant. My mother helped with basic administration. The first time my parents came to the office after the transition was surreal. They called me Mr. Rivera in front of other employees. The power dynamic had completely changed. A month after the acquisition, my mother asked if we could have lunch together. We met at a neutral restaurant, not one of the family restaurants that were now mine. "Alexander," she began, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "I want to ask for your forgiveness." "For what specifically?" "For everything. For throwing you out. For not defending you. For choosing our prejudices over our love for you." I could see she was being sincere, but 13 years of pain don't get erased with an apology. "Carol," I used her name, not Mom. "I appreciate the apology, but you need to understand that things have changed irreversibly. I know, I just want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret what we did." "And Dad? Does he regret it too?" "More than he would ever admit. Alexander, your father is broken. Not just financially, emotionally. He realizes he lost his most talented son because of his stupid pride. It was at that moment that I made a decision that surprised even myself. Carol, I want you to meet someone." I took out my phone and called Marcus. "Honey, can you come to the restaurant where we're having lunch? There's someone I want you to meet." When Marcus arrived, my mother went quiet. Marcus, being the incredible man he is, was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Rivera," he told her, "I've heard a lot about you." My mother blushed, probably imagining what he had heard. "I want you to know," Marcus continued, "that your son is the most incredible man I've ever met. He's intelligent, generous, hardworking, and loyal. You lost something very special when you rejected him." My mother started crying. "I know. God, I know." That was the first time in 13 years I saw my mother cry for me instead of for herself. Update 1. It's been 3 months since I acquired the company, and things have progressed in ways I didn't expect. First, the good news: the company is doing much better. We've recovered 60% of the losses, and we're on track to have a profitable year. It turns out that when you remove favoritism and bad management, things improve dramatically. David has been working at the other company, and honestly, it's been a revelation. Away from the pressure of being the heir, and with the expectation that he must earn everything, he's flourishing. His supervisor tells me he's hardworking, humble, and learning fast. Last week, David invited me to dinner at his house. It was the first time I'd seen his children since they were babies. His kids, 8 and 6, called me Uncle Alex, naturally, without knowing the whole family history. "Alex," David told me while the kids were playing, "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For not being like we were to you. For giving me a second chance." "David, you had 13 years to give me a second chance." I know, and that's why what you're doing means so much more. His children are incredible, by the way, smart, curious, and completely oblivious to family dramas. When they found out that Marcus and I are together, the youngest simply asked, "Uncle Alex, are you and Marcus going to get married like Mom and Dad?" The innocence of children is beautiful. Speaking of marriage, Marcus and I have started planning our wedding. Ironically, now that I own several restaurants, we have incredible options for the venue. And here comes the part I never thought I'd say. I decided to invite my parents. Not as the parents who gave me life, but as employees who have shown genuine remorse and respect for who I am now. My father approached me 2 weeks ago. "Alexander," he told me, "I know I have no right to ask you anything, but would it be possible? Could you consider me to walk you down the aisle?" The question caught me completely off guard. "Robert," I replied, 13 years ago, when I imagined my wedding, I always thought you would walk me down the aisle. But that person who would get married no longer exists, and the father who would walk with him doesn't either." His face fell. "However," I continued, "the man I am now would be honored to have Robert Rivera, someone who has learned from his mistakes and shown genuine growth, present at his wedding." It wasn't exactly what he had asked for, but I could see he understood the message. Update 2. The wedding was beautiful. Marcus and I got married in our home's garden overlooking the city. It was intimate, with only 50 guests, but every person there genuinely loved and supported us. My parents were there, sitting in the 3rd row, not the first as they would have been in another life. David and his family also came. It was strange seeing my entire biological family in the same place after so many years, but it also felt healing, somehow. The most emotional moment was when Marcus and I exchanged vows. I wrote mine thinking about the journey I had taken to get to that moment. Marcus, when I was 22, I thought I had lost my family forever. I didn't know then that I hadn't lost it. I just hadn't found it yet. My true family is you. It's our friends who are here today. It's the people who love us for who we really are, not for who they expect us to be. I could see my parents crying in the audience. After the ceremony, my father approached me. "Alexander, that was the most beautiful speech I've ever heard. And you're right. Your true family are the people who love you unconditionally. I hope that someday we can earn a place in that family." For the first time in 13 years, I hugged him. "Robert," I told him, "you're already on your way." As for business, the family company is now part of a larger portfolio I manage. We've expanded to 3 new cities and employ more than 200 people. David has been promoted twice at the other company and is considering going back to school for an MBA. My parents have found their rhythm in their new roles. My father has turned out to be an excellent mentor for young employees, and my mother has implemented efficiency systems that have saved thousands of dollars. But the most incredible thing that's happened is that my parents have started attending LGBTQ+ events in the city, not just as passive allies, but as activists. My mother now volunteers at an organization that helps homeless LGBTQ+ youth. "I want to make sure," she told me recently, "that no other parent makes the mistakes we made." Update 3. Marcus and I just returned from our honeymoon in Greece. It was incredible to have 3 weeks without thinking about work, family, or the past. Just the two of us exploring islands and planning our future together. When we returned, I found a letter waiting for me on my desk. It was from a group of parents of LGBTQ+ youth in the city, thanking my parents for their advocacy work and specifically mentioning how their experiences had helped other families reconcile. It turns out my parents have been using their story with me as a warning to other parents about what not to do. They've helped prevent at least 5 families from repeating their mistakes. Last week we had our first real family dinner in 14 years. My parents, David and his family, Marcus and me. David's children now call Marcus Uncle Marcus and are planning to be our ring bearers if we decide to have a vow renewal ceremony in a few years. During dinner, my father raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, "to Alexander, who taught us that true strength isn't in imposing your will on others, but in building something better from the ashes of your mistakes. And to Marcus," my mother added, "who gave us back our son by loving him exactly as he is." I'm not going to lie. I cried a little. But here's the craziest thing about this whole story. David approached me after dinner. "Alex," he told me, "I have something to confess." "What?" When we were kids, I always knew you were smarter than me. Better at business, better with people, better at everything. When you came out, part of me was glad because it meant I no longer had to compete with you. This totally surprised me. But now I realize, he continued, that we were never competing. You were being yourself, and I was trying to be someone I wasn't. These last few months, working on my own and earning things, have been the happiest of my work life. Really? Yes. For the first time, my achievements are mine. Not because I'm the favorite son or the designated heir, because I earned them. David is now considering starting his own business. I've offered to be an investor if his business plan is solid. For the first time in our lives, we're building a relationship as equals, not as the favorite heir and the rejected son. The family business, meanwhile, has exceeded all forecasts. We're considering opening international locations next year. Ironically, the business is more successful now than it ever was under my parents' original management. And here's the twist no one saw coming. Last week, my parents asked me if I would be willing to legally change the company name to Rivera & Associates to reflect that it's now truly a family business in the real sense. We want the name to recognize, my father told me, that this company thrives because our son runs it, not despite who our son is. I agreed to the name change, but the most incredible thing that's happened is personal. Marcus and I have started the adoption process. We want to adopt an LGBTQ+ teenager who has been rejected by their biological family. We want to give a child, Marcus told my parents when we shared our plans, what you gave Alexander when you finally understood, a family that loves him unconditionally. My parents immediately offered to be the grandparents the child would need. We have 14 years of grandparent love to make up for, my mother said. So here we are, from a family that rejected me for being gay, to a family that's actively helping other LGBTQ+ youth. From a rejected son, to a successful businessman who runs the family company, from a resentful younger brother, to an older brother who's finding his own path. It's not the family I thought I'd have growing up. It's better, because this family was built on acceptance, growth, and genuine love, not on expectations, prejudices, or obsolete traditions. And the next time someone asks me about forgiveness and second chances, I'm going to tell them this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or going back to the past. It means building something better in the future. My parents didn't get back the son they rejected 14 years ago. That son no longer exists. But they gained something better. They gained the respect and affection of the man that son became, despite everything they did to stop him. And honestly, I think it's a better ending than any of us expected. Update 4. I'm writing this final update from the airplane, returning from Paris, where Marcus and I just finalized the adoption of our son, Sebastian. Sebastian is 16 years old, and his story is devastatingly similar to mine. His parents threw him out when he was 15 for being gay. He spent the last year in the foster care system, being transferred from house to house because some families couldn't deal with a gay teenager. The first time we met him at the adoption center, I saw myself at 22, scared, angry, but with a fierce determination to survive. "Why do you want to adopt me?" he asked us directly. Most couples want babies. Marcus and I looked at each other, and then I told him my story. Everything. The rejection, the difficult years, the revenge, and finally, the reconciliation. When I finished, Sebastian was crying. "Did your parents really come to the wedding?" he asked. "Yes, and now they're helping other parents not make the same mistakes they did." "And your brother? He's now my business partner in his own company." It turns out that when you don't have to live under the shadow of impossible expectations, you can discover who you really are. Sebastian lived with us in foster care for 6 months before we finalized the adoption. During that time, my parents were incredible with him. My mother taught him to cook, my father told him stories about business, and David took him to sporting events. But the most special relationship he developed was with my mother-in-law, Marcus's mother. She lost her husband 3 years ago and had been quite lonely. Sebastian adopted her as his official grandmother, and she adopted him as her grandson of the heart. Grandma Rose, he calls her, and honestly, they've both healed each other in beautiful ways. The day the judge finalized the adoption, our entire extended family was present. My parents, David and his family, Marcus's mother, and even some of our employees who have become like family. When the judge asked, "Sebastian, do you understand that by finalizing this, adoption, Alexander and Marcus will legally be your parents forever?" Sebastian looked at the whole group and said, "Your Honor, I've had biological parents who rejected me for being who I am. Now I have parents who chose me precisely because I am who I am. I understand the difference perfectly. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night we had a celebration party at home. During dinner, my father asked for the floor. 4 years ago," he said, "I lost my son because of my ignorance and prejudice. I thought I had ruined everything forever." He stood up and put his hand on Sebastian's shoulder. "But life has given me the opportunity not only to get my son back, but to gain a grandson. Sebastian, welcome officially to this crazy family." Sebastian stood up and hugged my father. "Thank you for helping create the man who became my dad." Marcus and I were crying shamelessly. But here's the most incredible part of this whole story. Last week, we got a call from the adoption organization. There's a 14-year-old child whose family rejected him for being trans. They asked if we'd be interested in meeting him. Sebastian was the first to say yes. "Dad," he told me. And honestly, I never get tired of hearing that word. When I was little and my parents threw me out, I dreamed that a family like ours existed. Now we can be that family for someone else. So next month we'll meet Alex. Yes, ironically, he has the same name as me, to see if we could be a good fit for him. My mother, when she found out, immediately started planning how to convert another room into a perfect bedroom for a trans teenager. "You're going to need help with 2 teenagers, she told me. "It's good you have grandparents nearby." Rivera and Associates now operates in 6 cities. We employ more than 500 people, and we've just been recognized as one of the best companies to work for our inclusive policies. David finally finished his MBA and is running our new technology division. But more important than any business success, we've created something worth much more. A family built on unconditional love, acceptance, and second chances. Last week, while we were all having dinner together, my parents, David and his family, Marcus, Sebastian and me, my father made an observation that stuck with me. "You know," he said, "when I look back at what I thought I wanted for this family versus what we have now, I realize what we have is infinitely better." "Why?" Sebastian asked him. "Because the family I thought I wanted was based on conformity and tradition. The family we have now is based on love and authenticity. And it turns out that authentic love is much stronger than traditional expectations." Sebastian smiled. "Plus, chosen families are always stronger because everyone decides to be there. My 16-year-old son, who has lived through more rejection than any child should experience, understands something it took my parents decades to learn." As I write this, Marcus is sleeping in the seat next to me. Sebastian is listening to music with his headphones, and I'm thinking about how strange and beautiful the path that brought us here is. 6 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be returning from Paris after adopting my son, with my parents planning to be active grandparents, and my brother as a business partner, I would have told them they were crazy. But here we are. Sometimes life takes away the family you thought you wanted to give you the family you really need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you end up with both. This is really my final update, because after years of struggle, revenge, reconciliation, and growth, I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. Home. Not the home where I was born, but the home I built, with the people I chose, and who chose me. And that, friends, is worth more than any inheritance I could have ever received. P.S. Sebastian wants to start his own YouTube channel for LGBTQ+ teenagers in the foster care system. I'm pretty sure he's going to be better at this than me. Today's kids are incredible. And that's my story. Wow, what a journey, right? From being rejected by my family, to becoming the owner of the family business, and most importantly, to building a true family based on love and acceptance. I'd love to know what you think about all this. Do you think I did the right thing? Was my revenge too harsh or justified? Have you gone through something similar with your families? Leave me your comments below. I read every single one and I love hearing your perspectives. If this story moved you or made you reflect, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me reach more people who might need to hear that it is possible to rebuild after family betrayal. And of course, if you want more stories like this, because trust me, I have many more, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. Oh, and one more thing. Share it with someone you think needs to hear that there's always hope, even when everything seems lost. Right there on screen you have another video with an equally impactful story about how someone turned their biggest betrayal into their greatest triumph. Click to continue on this channel, where real stories surpass any fiction. See you in the next video.